Great. Well,
okay, perfect.
I'm so excited to have you on. I know we've been talking a lot. Actually, I was so excited because I wear my bracelet every day now. If you don't know, she has her own Etsy store that's really focused on giving back to survivors, but the messaging and the things that she provides to us are so pretty. They're awesome reminders of what we should be doing, and just those inner motivations that I think I need. I need the visuals. So mine says fucking fearless. You can't really see it.
That's right.
The light, but
that's right.
definitely the motto lately. Well, Jess,
that's right.
I was telling them a little bit about your 5-step program without giving it all away. But I wanted you to have the chance to kind of tell us your story and what you're doing now that you're an empowered survivor changing the world.
Okay. So I grew up in a domestic violence household. I witnessed my mother being beaten, and we were controlled, all of us. I have 2 sisters. We were all controlled by my father, and that really impacted everything in my life and my sisters' lives. And growing up with that, you kind of get set up to go right into another kind of abusive relationship when you don't even realize that that's what's happening. So I went from a domestic violence household to a emotionally controlling and abusive marriage. But I didn't even realize that I was being abused until much, much later. I was married for 23 years, and it took me until I was about 40 almost, I guess, to realize that that's what was really going on. The similarities, and just acknowledging to myself that this wasn't right, and I don't deserve that kind of treatment. So after, and it took me, like 7 years after that to leave, so it took a while. But once I did leave, I felt so empowered and so thankful for my freedom. And so I did a lot of research just to try to fix myself and to figure out why I wound up in the same space that I had been in my childhood, but in marriage. Right. So I didn't utilize a shelter, and I didn't know if there were services available to me. So I did everything on my own. And I realized that there really wasn't anybody there. There was nobody standing in my corner saying, hey, you can do this, and I can give you some guidance or advice on how to get back to yourself. And there was just nobody there in my corner. So it was just me and my kids and my sisters with me. There was, I'd cut out all the toxic in my life, and I kind of just moved forward slowly. And then I realized, because nobody's there, I wonder if everybody else is having the same problem. Yeah. And so that's when I've always wanted to help people. I've always helped people, and I'm very passionate about that. So one day I just kind of had an epiphany that that's what I wanted to do, as I specifically wanted to help survivors like me who had nobody in their corner. So that's how I kind of developed my program, and just really based on how I got through it, how I learned. So
that's amazing. I think life is such a great teacher when it comes down to it, but the fact that you're able to take what you've learned and kind of package it and say, okay, this is part of why I struggled, and this is something that I wish I had, and I'm just going to go out there and be that for other people. I think that's absolutely amazing. Yes. What's the name of your coaching program, or how could they find more about that?
Well, I have a website, but mostly I focus on Facebook. Okay. So you can find me on Facebook easily. And a lot of the survivors feel more comfortable messaging through Facebook, or through FaceTime, or through texting even, rather than having an in-person, because a lot of people have anxiety and they're not quite ready for one-on-one in-person sessions. So I really am just basing it on Facebook right now. I'm working on revamping my website. It's kind of outdated right now. But working on that. So, and as I've gone through more training and gotten some more certifications so that I can help more people, I need to update as I go along. But mainly Facebook, my Facebook page under Jess Kille Survivor Support Guide. You can find me there, or even just on my regular profile, Jess Kille. So,
cool. So I want to unpack one thing in particular, because I know that we hear from a lot of survivors. I know where a lot of my board members come from too, background-wise, and it does seem like some of us have that background of the toxic home and the broken home and the issues in the home. And I know when we were talking before, you were talking about how purposeful you were trying to be and not ending up in similar situations, and you might have already had those boundaries set, but then you still realize, you know, I did it. And I can't remember exactly the words that you used, but you had talked about this like epiphany of like, no, this is it. It's, you know, it might look a little different, but this is it. How do you process in your brain being so purposeful, being so intentional, and still ending up in a toxic relationship? Why does that still happen to us?
Well, the reason why it still happens is conditioning from childhood. Mm-hmm. You know, so many of us who wind up in abusive relationships come from that kind of controlling or witnessing abuse or some kind of neglect in our childhoods. And that kind of conditions us to put abuse and love together. So we don't really know, you know, our brains don't process that the abuse isn't correct, that, you know, the love that we're searching for does not have abuse in it. And in childhood, when you have that, it sets you up for failure. You know, it sets you up to perpetuate that cycle and makes you vulnerable to getting into another setting just like that. So in your mind, you are thinking, I'm never going to wind up in a place like this. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to, you know, be abused. If he does this one thing, or if they do this one thing, I'm out. And then they don't do it, but there's all these other things that they do that's not okay. But you allow it because you're equating it with that attention is love. Right. And, you know, because in our brains, that's how we've been taught. We've been taught to take whatever somebody gives us, because that's what love is. We take it so that they feel okay, so that they're okay. They're feeling all right, and they're feeling great, but we're sacrificing. We're sacrificing ourselves for them. And that's really not fair. You know, in a loving relationship, it should be emotionally equal. You be there for them, they be there for you. And they're being controlled, verbally abused, put down, you know, told what you can wear and what you can't wear. And then obviously the physical aspect, that's just not okay, and that's not normal. It's not normal. So when you finally wake up and you say, I'll tell you how I woke up. I was telling a young lady, she was probably 18, and she was telling me all these things that her boyfriend was doing, and I was telling her, no, that's not correct, you know, and you should don't stand for that, and that's not okay, and this and that. And I realized I was telling her my life, of what was happening in my life too. And that was my wake-up call, like, what have I been doing this whole time? I've been allowing this, and I've been blind because I love them so much that I just allowed this to happen. I allowed it to happen. And really, I know that sounds kind of weird to a survivor to say I allowed it, but in a respect, you do kind of, because you don't realize that your conditioning has made you vulnerable to that. So when you figure out finally that you don't deserve the behavior that they're giving to you, you don't deserve the treatment, and you start thinking, how can I fix it? How can I get myself to be okay and not be crushed by their like dysregulation? You know, how can I help myself? So when you find yourself there, you kind of kick yourself a bit, but really, because you really think you've been a strong person, you think you have confidence and you can handle just about anything life can throw you, and then you realize, I am back to where I was before. And that's really hard. That's really hard. But it's also freeing because you can move on from that point. You can make those changes in your life if you're brave enough to do it.
Absolutely. And I think about when you talk about sacrifice, I'm sacrificing this for you. We have this awful misconstrued idea in love that that's what it is. Love is sacrifice.
Yeah.
But it's not fully sacrifice, right? It's compromise. Very different.
Compromise.
And what you're willing to compromise is different. It makes me think, you're talking about I'm not going to stand for X, Y, and Z, but missing the whole part that all of the toxic behavior doesn't necessarily start from different roots. A lot of it's the same kind of roots. It's manipulation and it's control. But we associate it with, well, trying to think of a good example, but we'll associate it with
they're overprotective. And that, they love me so much, they're overprotective,
Yeah, I think we definitely can misconstrue what the root of the behavior is. He only is texting me a million times a day because he's protective and he's worried about me, so much care, when it's, well, no, it's actually manipulation and control. But it could go the other way too, right? So from childhood, if, dad or mom put their hands on each other, you go, well, that was abuse. So as long as he doesn't hit me, I'm okay.
Exactly.
But every other physical act could be fine, or the way that he speaks to you, or the way that they control, manipulate, and track and things like that, and keep you, maintained. You start to look at it and go, that's not what I'm worried about. And I think that tends to be that cycle. And if anybody was with somebody who experienced abuse growing up and ended up growing into an abuser, like fixers out there, definitely one of those, had to fix that a lot. But you look at their trauma and they do the same thing, right? They build those boundaries. Well, he did this, I will never do that. But what they do is still abusive. And I think that us being able to talk to, like you said, you're talking to an 18-year-old and giving her this whole spiel about it, and you're looking at it going, oh my God, that's my life. I have to do something. I think we've all have those moments. But I think that there's something so critical in the way that we teach abuse now. And a lot of us are parents and we have children and we're trying to raise them to break those cycles too. And I think we sometimes miss it. It's so much easier to teach the concept of the physical actions, the verbal actions and things like that, versus being able to teach those root causes and getting them to comprehend that and be wary of it and be cautious of it. Looks like Jess.
Sorry, I lost you there for a second.
That's okay. That's okay. I had so many questions for you, but that last answer did so much, because you unpacked the childhood trauma, the conditioning, but also looking at yourself as an adult and being able to break that down. One of the things I would want to talk about though is, there's a point, if you're watching and you just got out, there's a lot that goes through your head, and sort of like Jess was talking about with I allowed it to happen. We never place blame, but that has to be managed, right? Like, we're only going to work through it, but we got to work through it. And if we're going to get through it, we have to. And I think that's a part of it too, is understanding what has been your norm, your MO, and how you've been present in it and how you can change that. Because unfortunately, we can't change anything that we don't address. But then you start to back up and you go, well, if I allowed this, why did I stay? Maybe that one person asked you that stupid question, because guys, it's a stupid question. But
yeah,
ask yourself
survivors get asked that all the time. You know, well, why didn't you just leave? You know, why didn't you just get out? Well, it's so not that easy. It's not that easy because there's so much fear. You know, our fear holds us back in so many ways and in so many aspects of our life. And not only do you have your regular normal fears of your day-to-day, you know, can I accomplish this, whatever, but if you're afraid of how somebody's going to act in your household, if you're afraid of what they're going to say, if you're going to be put down, that's a compounded fear. You know, you're already at your threshold and above, you know, in you know, like your adrenaline is high already, because you're always walking on eggshells, always trying to, you know, figure out how to keep everything calm, you know.
Yeah.
So women, well, survivors, they stay because of so many reasons. One, they're afraid, you know, that their normal is going to be taken away, which it is, and change is scary. Scary, scary. When you decide to get out, there's so many aspects that you don't know what's going to happen. If you decide to go to a shelter, you don't know how that's going to be. You don't know how you're going to be treated there. You don't know if you're going to get the help that you need. If you get out without a shelter, where are you going to go? A lot of survivors are not financially able to get out. They're stuck. There's a lot of emotional abuse and entails financial abuse as well.
Yeah.
So not having the funds to get out, being afraid to leave your pets behind, not knowing, you know, if the shelter is going to take your children, especially if you have special needs children. There's not a lot of facilities that can accommodate that, unfortunately. And shelters are just now in some states starting to have pet-friendly facilities. So, and if you're a man, you're on your own pretty much. You know, if you're a guy, you can't really get services. It's very hard for them to even be believed. So there's all these aspects of why you can't just get out, you know, but fear being the number one thing. So if you can make a plan or know that you have to get out, that's a huge thing to overcome. And that's so brave and so strong that you make that decision, because you know in your heart that you don't deserve this. You deserve way more. So making that decision to get out is very difficult. There's more aspects than just, you know, why didn't you just leave?
Absolutely. And I think that's important to note when you are starting to ask yourself that question, because it does come up. And I think that's, at least for my journey, that was one of the hardest pieces to grapple with, was where was I in this? And if I can accept that life is a part of it, I can actually change it too. But those are the hard questions for sure.
The asking yourself why you stayed, you have to do a lot of self-reflection. You have to go within yourself. You have to look at those hard parts of your trauma that changed you. You have to identify those things and kind of work through them to get to your real self. You know, if you just skate over everything, you're never going to heal. You're not going to ever heal. You have to identify the things that hurt you, that changed you, and you have to look at them. And you have to also look at, okay, yes, the abuse I suffered as a child was not my fault. But as an adult, I have to claim myself and accept myself and hopefully love myself to be able to be successful in life. If I want to have a successful life, I need to make changes, and to look at yourself and say, I made this mistake, and I did this thing. I don't really like it, but I did, and I'm okay, and I own that. That gives you so much freedom. It gives you so much freedom to move forward. Just saying, yes, I did that. Yeah, it sucked and it wasn't great and I don't like it, but I'm not going to do it again, and I'm going to move forward and heal myself and help myself. And that's completely freeing. Completely
For
freeing.
sure. I think one of the best things that I ever heard in actual counseling through domestic violence was I was getting really upset because as you unpack that shit is nasty. It is
Yeah, it's
awful to
ugly.
sit there. And it's hard because you're looking at it and you're going, but I didn't do a lot of the bad stuff. But I did things that
Right.
allowed it. I did things that kept me in a situation that now I'm really embarrassed about. I hate that I'm seeing all these repercussions from. And that guilt factor starts to set in. And you
Right.
just get so angry
Absolutely.
sometimes. And one of the counselors that I was working with at the time said, first time seeing her was, it's okay. Whatever you're going to tell me is going to be fine because I'm going to go off of this one main assumption that you made the best decision that you could make at the time with the information you had.
Right.
And there was
Exactly.
something so absolutely freeing of going, can I do that for myself? Like, can I objectively look at what I'm doing and going, okay, we're going to unpack this, but I'm going to take myself just a little bit out of it and go, you did what you did with the best information that you had at the time. That's okay. We're going to change it because now there's new information. We're building
Exactly.
from that and going from there. But that's so,
Right.
it's so true. And it's so hard to work through that process. What would you say?
Yes.
What would you say to that person who is starting that emotionally treacherous area, right? And what would you say for their healing? What are those first few steps that you can take saying, I'm ready to heal. I'm ready to move forward?
Okay. So I think one of the first things you kind of need to do is isolate yourself a little bit. Not like, get rid of everybody, whatever, but isolate yourself kind of emotionally so you have that time and quiet space to be with yourself, without, all these outside, you should have done this or you did that or whatever. Just be alone with yourself. And don't jump into a new relationship right away, because again, that's just skating over everything else and it's just going to compound your issues. So just be alone with yourself for a while. To do that, that introspection and just feel who you are. And when you feel who you are and kind of, and you accept yourself, that like I said before, it's very freeing. And when you start to open yourself up to your own self and kind of treat yourself like your own best friend and start caring for yourself, that kind of moves you along to, what, I do deserve to be happy. I do deserve to be surrounded by things I love. I do deserve to wear that kick-ass dress to that meeting. I deserve. So, being alone with yourself and feeling yourself and finding direction in yourself is probably the number one thing. Then I would say, well, and that goes going along with that, like self-care, doing things that maybe you couldn't have done before, listening to that music really loud that makes you feel alive, spending time with your kids by yourself, or, supportive people. And then, finding help, even if that's just a friend, a therapist, a life coach, somebody who can be your support, that's not necessarily, that it doesn't have a bias and that doesn't, isn't so close to you that they know, too much to help you unpack all that, So I wrote down a couple, another one. Oh, yeah, work on mindset. Mindset is a huge thing. So, I say replace your thoughts all the time. Like when you start having those negative thoughts, and especially with PTSD, it's hard, because you have those unwanted thoughts all the time. But when you can recognize that you've started thinking that negative thought, you can stop yourself and say, okay, I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to turn this to something else. Either I'm going to replace it with a wholly positive thought, or I'm going to go do something else to distract myself from that negativity that I don't really want to visit. You know, I mean, in some instances, you do need to look at that feeling and then and analyze it a little bit. But in cases where you have those intrusive things and you just don't want to deal with it, you just replace it with something great, or have an affirmation. You know, like if you're feeling, oh, I'm never going to get this done, or I can't do this, say, I am going to get this done, or I will get it done. You know, and set those kinds of things for yourself, like, oh, I feel so ugly today, or my hair is a mess and I can't work it, or whatever. You know, tell yourself in the mirror, I'm a beautiful creature. My hair is great. It's fine. I will work with it because I can do it.